Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive right in and unpack a truly unexpected, fast moving story that's unfolding right now over in Southeast Asia. I'm taking you on a journey through Vietnam's rapid, kind of under the radar transformation into an absolute automotive and green energy powerhouse. You know, if you thought the electric vehicle revolution was only happening in places like the US, Europe, or China, well, this explainer is going to completely flip that perspective. We're going to uncover some really fascinating new insights into exactly how emerging markets are out there rewriting the rules of the entire game. Right off the bat, I really want to hook your attention with this absolutely massive figure, 99%. Think about that for a second. In almost any open market, seeing one single company hold 99% of an entire sector, it's basically unheard of. But in Vietnam's booming electric vehicle market, a single national champion holds exactly that. It's a virtual monopoly, and as we're going to see today, it is entirely reshaping the country's economy and its infrastructure from the ground up. So, here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover 1. Vietnam's green energy revolution. 2. The unstoppable VinFast monopoly. 3. The true cost of driving. 4. Scaling solar power infrastructure. And finally, 5. Trade deals and European struggles. All right, let's jump right into part 1. Vietnam's green energy revolution. Just look at this phenomenal growth rate. Between 2025 and 2026, sales of electrified vehicles in Vietnam grew at a rate of over 80% annually. That is huge. And here's the thing, this isn't just organic growth. It's actually heavily engineered by the state. The government aggressively pushed this transition through total exemptions on registration taxes and some really targeted subsidies. They basically wanted a revolution, and, well, this 80% figure proves they absolutely got one. And that massive growth, it translates directly into market share. By 2026, electrified vehicles captured nearly half the total market, sitting at 42.8%. Meanwhile, traditional internal combustion engine vehicles, which make up the remaining 57.2%, are just facing severe stagnation. It's causing brutal price wars, with dealerships being forced to heavily discount those gas-powered cars literally just to get them off the lot. You know, this brilliantly illustrates the mindset shift happening on the ground right now. Over 70% of Vietnamese consumers are now actively saying their next car is going to be electric or hybrid. That is a dramatic consumer pivot. The legacy Japanese and Korean brands that used to completely dominate Vietnam's roads, they are watching their market share actively get cannibalized. The demand has just totally flipped. Moving right along to Section 2, the unstoppable VinFast monopoly. So the company pulling the strings on that 99% of the EV market, it's VinFast. And they've done it through a highly strategic, incredibly diverse vehicle lineup. They literally have all their bases covered. You've got the Limo Green, which is often based on their larger MPVs, specifically optimized for high-capacity commercial transit and taxi fleets. Then there's the VF3. It's this rugged, off-road-inspired mini SUV that's barely over 3 meters long, perfect for tight urban spaces. And finally, the VF5, which is their mass-market crossover giving you a solid 300-kilometer range. They've essentially built a car for every single type of local buyer. But VinFast knows the game isn't over. They see cheap Chinese competitors like BYD trying to push into the market. So to defend their turf, they are building an absolute moat around their monopoly. They pumped $404 million directly into their proprietary V-Green charging network. This massive capital injection is specifically designed to completely eliminate charging bottlenecks out in rural areas, making sure that a VinFast vehicle is actually practical everywhere, not just in the big downtown cities. Which brings us to Section 3, the true cost of driving. Okay, the real so what is right here in the data. Let's look at this cost breakdown. Gasoline sits around 81 cents a liter, and diesel is pushing near $1. When you consider the local purchasing power in Vietnam, importing these expensive fossil fuels really hits the wallet hard. But then, look at electricity rates. Because public utility electricity is highly regulated, home EV charging runs only about 8 to 12 cents per kilowatt hour. Even if you're using fast public DC charging on the V-Green network, you're only paying 15 to 20 cents. The economic advantage of EVs in Vietnam is actually way superior to what we're even seeing over in Europe right now. Economically speaking, making the switch to an EV over there is just an absolute no-brainer. Let's transition to Section 4, scaling solar power infrastructure. Because you have to power all those cars, right? Well, Vietnam is actually the undisputed solar leader in the ASEAN region. By 2026, their installed solar capacity hit 21.76 gigawatts, and it is projected to skyrocket up to 37.63 gigawatts by 2031. That is a compound annual growth rate of over 11%. And it's not just to charge cars. This boom is being driven by intense government planning, a massive manufacturing sector, and the sheer energy demands of all the new data centers popping up. However, I gotta be honest, this explosive growth has created some really severe growing pains. See, early on, Vietnam offered these incredibly generous feed-in tariffs, which were basically guaranteed government payments just for generating solar energy. Naturally, this sparked an uncontrolled boom in solar installations, especially down in the south. The result? They ended up with localized solar overproduction that the current power grid literally cannot transport. It is currently estimated that a staggering $15 billion in investment is urgently needed just to modernize those southern transmission backbones, so all this clean energy doesn't just go to waste. So how do you fix a strained grid? Vietnam is pushing some incredibly innovative models to stabilize things and manage the natural intermittency of renewable energy. For one, they're rolling out direct power purchase agreements, which allow factories to just buy clean energy directly from the producers. They're also optimizing space by installing floating solar panels right on top of existing hydroelectric basins. And perhaps most importantly, they are now making battery energy storage systems mandatory for new solar projects to help capture and manage peak demand. Finally, let's hit Section 5, Trade Deals and European Struggles. So what happens when this domestic strategy hits the global stage? Let's look at the geopolitical contrast. Under their free trade agreement with the EU, Vietnam actually eliminated 99% of customs duties overall, but they deliberately maintained strict protection specifically on their auto sector. Why? To protect VinFast from foreign competition until it reaches a massive economy of scale. Now contrast that with India. India did the exact opposite in their recent EU agreement. They slashed their 110% auto tariffs all the way down to 10%, specifically to attract European technology and turn India into an open market electrification hub. We're looking at two completely different paths to industrialization here. And Vietnam's protectionist approach, it definitely comes with global challenges. Despite having these really sleek designs from prestigious studios like Pininfarina, VinFast had to drastically pull back its European expansion in 2025. Their whole attempt at a direct sales model turned out to be financially unsustainable. When you combine that with high accumulated debt, really tough macroeconomic conditions, and some pretty harsh consumer critiques comparing their driving dynamics and software stability to those legacy European brands, they simply weren't ready for the hyper-competitive European market. It actually forced them to retreat and refocus heavily on their dominant Asian base. Well, before we look at our final thought, I really just want to take a quick moment to say thank you. Thank you for your time and your focus today on this explainer. We've covered an incredible interplay of state protectionism, massive solar scaling, and sheer electric vehicle dominance. I genuinely hope this provided you with some highly valuable new insights into exactly how emerging economies are out there aggressively shaping our global green future. And I'll leave you with this really powerful final question to ponder. Can a protected domestic giant truly survive the fierce open waters of the global market? VinFast owns Vietnam today, but the geopolitical chess match, it's literally only just beginning. Keep an eye on this space because the next move is going to be absolutely fascinating. Thanks so much for tuning in and keep learning.